From the very beginning, Steve Winwood wasn't just another musician trying to find his place. Even as a kid, he wanted to bring more color into music, blending folk, classical elements, world music, and anything else that sparked his curiosity. While most teenagers were buried in schoolwork, Steve was already in smoky nightclubs at just 15 years old, sounding like a seasoned 40-year-old soul singer. His voice carried a depth no one could explain, and his hands moved across the Hammond organ as if he'd lived there all his life. People couldn't believe someone so young could sound so wise. But that was Steve Winwood, no pretending, no imitation. Just pure, lived-in soul. He devoured every record he could get his hands on: blues, soul, jazz, rock. He didn't simply listen to music. He absorbed it until it became his second language. Other young British musicians were copying American styles. Winwood was doing something different, translating those sounds, reshaping them into something personal. His keyboard work blended church, blues, and jazz in a way nobody else could match. Whether he was with the Spencer Davis Group, Traffic, Blind Faith, or performing solo decades later, Winwood stayed committed to searching for that perfect mixture of technique and heart. Touring, recording, experimenting, the journey never stopped, and the albums he loved most weren't just favorites. They were building blocks. They shaped his creativity, taught him what emotion sounded like, and helped him understand how to make an organ breathe and how to make a song feel alive. These 7 albums molded him from a prodigy into a master. So here, on Legend Uncovered, are the 7 albums Steve Winwood says influenced him the most. And as you listen, think about this: which one of these records changed him the most? 7. The Genius of Ray Charles. When Steve Winwood first heard Ray Charles, something inside him shifted forever. The Genius of Ray Charles, released in 1959, wasn't just another record, it was a masterclass in how to fuse jazz, blues, gospel, and pop into one unforgettable voice. Ray's piano didn't just play notes, it created worlds. His voice could break your heart or lift your spirit within the same line. As a young musician in Birmingham, Winwood listened with awe. He didn't want to copy Ray, he wanted to understand what Ray understood, that music had no borders, only emotion. Songs like Let the Good Times Roll and Come Rain or Come Shine had lush arrangements, but Ray's voice kept everything grounded, raw, and real. His left hand walked out deep bass lines while his right hand spun melodies that felt like conversations. Winwood studied that balance, grace and grit existing together. Ray Charles taught him how to make the keyboard speak, cry, and shout. Later, when Winwood's Hammond organ filled entire concert halls, echoes of Ray Charles were right there, guiding his hands. 6. Folk singer Muddy Waters. Winwood first discovered the blues through Muddy Waters' electric sound, but it was folk singer from 1964 that opened a new door for him. No amps, no electricity, just Muddy, an acoustic guitar, and the blues stripped to its most honest form. Muddy's voice rolled like distant thunder, and every guitar note landed with intention. Songs like My Home is in the Delta felt both ancient and timeless, while Good Morning, Little Schoolgirl carried a quiet intensity that didn't need volume to hit hard. This album taught Winwood something profound: power doesn't always need loudness. Sometimes the softest note carries the biggest truth. Muddy had built electric Chicago blues, he made the blues roar. But when he returned to acoustic roots, people leaned in and listened closer. That authenticity shook Winwood. You couldn't fake this kind of truth. It wasn't technique, it was life experience, and Winwood carried that lesson everywhere, even during his hit-making days with the Spencer Davis Group. Technique mattered, but soul mattered more. 5. Kind of Blue. Miles Davis. When Winwood heard Kind of Blue, the world seemed to pause. Miles Davis' 1959 masterpiece changed the definition of what music could be. The modal jazz approach, improvising based on feeling rather than strict chord changes, was revolutionary. Miles' trumpet didn't scream for attention. It whispered truths that cut deeper than any shout. John Coltrane's saxophone sounded like it was searching for something just barely out of reach. The entire album floated like smoke, soft, haunting, unforgettable. Tracks like So What, Freddie Freeloader, and Blue and Green taught Winwood that space mattered. The silence between notes was as powerful as the notes themselves. Every musician played with restraint, intention, and emotion, but what transformed Winwood most was the improvisation, musicians creating in real time, responding to one another, discovering magic that would never be repeated the same way again. This directly shaped Winwood's later work with Traffic and his own solo performances. Long jams, wandering solos, unplanned musical conversations, all of it traced back to Kind of Blue. Miles taught him that music could be freedom. 4. Green Onions, Booker T. and the M. Steve Winwood found his organ voice through Booker T. Jones. Green Onions, released in 1962, revolutionized how the Hammond B3 organ fit into rock and soul. Booker T played with the perfect balance of force and subtlety. The title track was nothing fancy, just a straightforward groove, yet it was unstoppable. The organ bubbled and roared, the guitar snapped, and the rhythm section locked in so tight it felt effortless. Winwood heard that sound and instantly knew, this is what I want to do. Booker T showed the world that the organ could lead a band, carry a melody, and shape a song's entire personality. Every note mattered. Every rhythm breathed. What Winwood admired most was the discipline, no unnecessary solos, no showing off, just musicians working together for the groove. That philosophy became central to Winwood's own music, especially on Gimme Some Lovin'. Booker T gave him permission to make the organ the star. 3. Revolver, The Beatles. When Revolver came out in 1966, it shattered boundaries. Winwood heard this album and felt his imagination explode. The Beatles weren't just writing songs, they were redefining how music could be made. Backwards guitars, psychedelic loops, orchestral tension. Bold new recording techniques. Revolver was adventurous, fearless, and unafraid of criticism. Tomorrow Never Knows sounded like it arrived from a different universe. Eleanor Rigby broke hearts with nothing but strings and voices. Taxman, Here, There, and Everywhere, and She Said pushed the band into uncharted territories. This album showed Winwood that pop music could still be experimental, emotional, and meaningful. Around the same time, he was forming Traffic and experimenting heavily. Revolver reassured him that taking risks was not only allowed, it was necessary. The Beatles could have stayed safe after their massive success, but they reinvented themselves instead. That courage inspired Winwood to do the same. 2. A Love Supreme. John Coltrane. Steve Winwood described A Love Supreme as a spiritual moment more than a musical one. Released in 1965, it was John Coltrane's musical prayer for movements of devotion, exploration, and transcendence. Coltrane's saxophone didn't just play melodies, it sought meaning. Acknowledgement repeated its central theme like a mantra. Resolution surged with confidence. Pursuance raced with urgency. Psalm felt like a prayer spoken through breath instead of words. Winwood felt this deeply. He learned that music could be sacred, that playing an instrument could be a form of worship. The dedication, discipline, and emotional vulnerability in Coltrane's performance inspired Winwood to approach his own music with the same sincerity. This album influenced the long, soulful improvisations in Traffic, the searching quality of his solos, and the spiritual intensity he brought to the organ. Coltrane taught him that when you play from the soul, the music becomes eternal.
1. Mr. Fantasy, Traffic. For his number 1, Steve Winwood didn't choose a famous jazz record or a legendary blues album. He chose something personal. Traffic's debut album, Mr. Fantasy, from 1967. Not out of ego, but because this was the first time he felt true artistic freedom. Recorded in a small cottage in the English countryside, Mr. Fantasy captured everything Winwood loved: rock, jazz, folk, soul, and psychedelia blending into something raw and adventurous. No rules, no pressure. Just 4 musicians following the music wherever it wanted to go. Dear Mr. Fantasy rose from quiet beginnings into something huge and emotional, powered by Winwood's organ and aching voice. Paper Sun carried psychedelic charm. Hole in My Shoe embraced whimsy and imagination. This album taught Winwood the most important lesson of his entire career. Trust the music. Trust the feeling. The greatest songs aren't created through formulas. They're discovered by brave musicians willing to lose themselves in sound. Traffic's debut wasn't just an album for Winwood. It was a philosophy, a reminder that art needs freedom. Steve Winwood never stopped searching, exploring, or learning. These 7 albums, filled with soul, courage, blues, jazz, and honesty, shaped his journey from a young prodigy into a legend. Which of these albums changed your world? Share in the comments and subscribe to Legend Uncovered for more stories about artists who chose depth and truth over easy shortcuts.
Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon.